Hello, world. My name is Daniel Marty Elkins, and you are listening to and watching Talk About It, the show in which we engage in conversations about the opioid epidemic and all things prevention, intervention, and everything in between. My guest today is Scott Michels from Cause the World Inc., and today we're going to talk about it. Well, hello and welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here, Scott.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It is absolutely a pleasure to be on Talk About It.
So, for our viewers, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey through prevention and where you started and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Sure. I guess I should probably start by talking about the cause and what the acronym stands for, because
Sure.
I think that sort of helps understand it. But the acronym stands for collective action, meaning coming together in actions, urging, pushing forward social evolution. And the idea is that if we understand that evolution is something that is occurring and we're aware of it, could we perhaps actually speed it up or intentionally start to evolve our society into ways that are more beneficial to us, that create happier, healthier situations? So, how did this come about? Well, really in a funny, backwards manner. I was basically moving to Delaware, back to Delaware, and looking for a job. And wonderful woman named Sharon Baker with Teleductions had basically put me in a position where I could be at the Ferris School, which is a level 4 adjudication for native services here in Delaware.
Mhm.
The Ferris School to do a program where we made public service announcements. And so the idea was we had a simple camera and a simple setup, and the youth would learn how to sick public service announcement on whatever they kind of. And it was a very small contract and a small little project. But what happened was that the youth then started saying, well, we would like to do a video about gambling. And first of all, I should point out that these were kids who were sort of disenfranchised,
Mhm.
who were all of a sudden finding connections through an art of the medium of video production. But it was exciting them towards the project, but also we were seeing other parts of their behavior that were improving because they were sort of into this project. So all of a sudden, some bells started to go off, which is like, wow, these kids who have been disenfranchised, who are in trouble right now, are actually sparking and lighting up, creating positive content for peers. And so at the time, we're like, this is amazing. And then they said, the youth said, we'd like to check out gambling. We want to do a video on gambling. So after that, I called the Delaware Council on Gambling Problems. At the time, there's a fellow George Meldrum there, who's a wonderful community guy right now, person out there. And he basically said, we'd love to support this. And not only that, Scott, why don't we fly you out to a gambling conference?
Mhm.
And so what happened was I flew out to this gambling conference, learned all about gambling, brought back this information to the youth. They then created, we trained them, they created a great message. All of a sudden, next thing you know, we get a phone call from the Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence saying, hey, we see that there's some videos being made here. Any chance we can get our messages in? So sure enough, we said, let's set that up. And then they sent me to a training.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden, what was this pattern was that nonprofit groups that had different sort of issues, if you will, that they're working on in the community, different causes,
Mhm.
were sending me to different trainings to try to bring information back that we can then have youth spread this information to help others live happier and healthier, safer lives. But what happened was every single conference I went to, if you were to just cross out the name of the conference, drug prevention, violence prevention, substance or healthy relationships, if you were to take the title away and look at what all of the different offerings were and the courses, all of them seemed to be the same.
Mhm.
They were talking about trauma. They were talking about peer-to-peer messaging, impacting a big message on making sure whichever group or audience or population you're working with has a voice, and not even just a voice, power in how they're served. So all of a sudden, it was almost comical. I was like, I'm being sent to the same conference again and again. But what made me realize was that what we think are social issues
Mhm.
are really, if you look at them all, almost like the tip of the iceberg. But if you were to go down at the causes and the potential solutions of these things that are challenging people, they're actually very similar. And a lot of it comes down to how we treat each other, how we share information with each other, and how we inspire each other, and how we choose to use our power of influence. So, with that, the cause was basically born realizing that, wait a second, if we had an intentional business
Mhm.
that helped people gain new information, learn how to empower themselves to live happier and healthier lives, but then most importantly, have ways that they can immediately spread this news to their peers, families. And at first, we were thinking big. In other words, what I mean by that is we wanted people to make messages for like national audiences.
Mhm.
But we have since realized that the power of the cause is really in having people only concentrate on reaching the people right across the table from them, whether that's their
That's right.
family, friends, or peers. And then that if we could reach that person and they fully get it, it's up to them to reach the people around them if they know we can evolve. So that's a long winded way, but how did that get me into prevention? Well, just about every issue, you know, is something that most attention goes to it when someone is already in trouble.
Mhm.
Whether it's drug addiction, we wait till they're experiencing addiction. If it's someone in healthy relationships, we wait until they're the victim of violence. And so there's a lot of things out there about intervention,
Mhm.
changing things that already happened. But I have just learned from, and it's funny, I've been following the series, talk
Mhm.
about a series. You've had on a lot of people who have influenced me, mentors
Mhm.
throughout my career. And all of them basically, you know, combined together helped us realize that this is something that we can inspire everybody to do. And that like prevention really is, you know, I saw the episode with Dion Cornish. She was talking about it's not so much the seatbelt, but the whole mentality of it.
Right.
And for those who didn't see that episode, you know, primary prevention
Mhm.
is when we are trying to stop things before they even start. And the wonderful story, I would just go back and watch that episode if you haven't seen it, is the upstream theory.
Mhm.
That instead of pulling people out who are in trouble at this, where we see them in the stream, send people up, see what the causes are, the issues are. And when you put that all together, it's funny because, in my opinion, connection and just understanding that you can be the support system for someone who has been traumatized, whether that's a family member or someone right in front of you, that prevention is something that is holistic and can be part of our everyday.
So I've had the privilege of working with you for about a decade, and one of the gifts that I have seen you display and inspire in others is the ability to take an individual and convince them that it is actually possible to make a change. Because when you are looking in these situations, there's so many times in which people look at the world and say, it is what it is. And they feel like they don't have the power to actually make that change. And so, can you speak a little bit to that? How does the cause inspire others to realize that there is a possibility to change the current environment?
I really appreciate that question because that is our starting point. Most people feel helpless. They feel that they're just one person. How can, you know, okay, there's a substance abuse problem. How can one person do it? Especially if I don't even know anyone who it is. So we actually lean on our friends with the starfish casters for a story and a parable that they have that is really about norms changing.
Mhm.
And what are norms? They are things that we accept as normal, that our, you know, our behaviors sort of sustain.
Mhm.
Some norms are healthy and some are unhealthy. I think we could all sort of think about norms in our lives that might be either unhealthy or unhealthy. So with norms that have been around for a while, just a couple are like everyone's going to get bullied. There will always be poverty. You know, these are things that people just are accepting as normal. With that accepting of normal, we actually then create this sustainable birthing of that. So there's a story that initially is written by Lauren Isley as a parable.
Mhm.
I believe the original one's called The Star Thrower. But we have molded it into a thing called the Starfish Casters. It has 5 aha points, and I'm going to talk to the audience for a moment on that.
Mhm.
But I think it's important because right now you might be watching all of these shows and be like, whatever, I'm a sideline player. There's no way I can change the outcome of this.
Mhm.
But we start by describing this thing called Dead Starfish Beach. And for the viewers at home or the listeners, Dead Starfish Beach is anything that you see as being a norm that is so large you don't think it's possible to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the story it goes like this. There was once a beach called Dead Starfish Beach. And Dead Starfish Beach was called Dead Starfish Beach because for generations starfish would wash up on the ocean, they would get stuck in the light, they would die there, and then just start piling up corpses upon corpses. So the thing is that no one had ever seen the clean beach. So to everyone who was born, it's like, it is what it is. It's Dead Starfish Beach. And you know what? Stay away from there. It's dangerous. It's nasty. Don't put developments over there. Don't even waste your time or resources over there because it's Dead Starfish Beach. So I'm hopefully painting the direness of it. So one day a little girl is out there and she's walking on Dead Starfish Beach and she's finding a starfish that are still alive and throwing them to safety. An old jaded man who's been living near Starfish Beach his whole life sees this and, well, comes up, says, well, what are you doing, little girl? And she says, I am saving the starfish. So the old man, oh, well, that's very, very cute, little girl. But, you're one little girl and there's all these starfish, 50 wash up a night. There's no way you can you're not going to make a difference throwing one at a time. So at that, this is the main parable. The little girl looks down and sees a starfish that's still living. She picks it up, shows it to the old man and says, well, sir, it's going to make a world of difference to this one. So she throws that in, and that's the first aha, which is that every action makes a difference, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so right now, when we start to tell these things, I want you to start to think of at the people at home. What are small actions that you do in your daily life that might someone else's life? Whether it is just making a post on social media, having a conversation with somebody, helping someone, just who's right in front of you. Small little things, but it's going to make a difference to someone, perhaps. So the old man, though, and that first aha, by the way, you can repeat it at home. All actions make a difference. Okay, good. The second aha is that the old man looks down. He goes, well, this is Dead Starfish Beach, though. It's cute that you're helping one or two, but you're really not saving all the starfish.
Mm-hmm.
At that, the little girl says, well, what if the starfish I have, in its own language, after being thrown back into the ocean, sees other starfish heading towards danger and says, hey, stay away from there. We're dying. So it's the second aha is that all actions ripple beyond your sight. Now, on that, will everyone listen? I'm not sure. But the more people that we put out there, the messengers, maybe they will listen. As a recovering alcoholic, when I go back into the ocean, I can tell people I see heading towards alcoholism, hey, I've been there, don't go there. It's their choice if they listen to or not. But every action makes a difference. Every action ripples beyond sight. The third thing is that he looks down and sees where there's always been dead starfish is actually sand. And that's when he realizes, oh my gosh, this can actually be a beach. And he realizes this is a big one, folks. Dead Starfish Beach is Dead Starfish Beach because that's the world we accept as normal. And so at that, the third aha, he realizes that there's no neutral. Your daily actions and your movements or whatever are either helping to clean the beach or allowing it to get worse. They're either helping you in your life or allowing it to get worse. Every action. So every action makes a difference. It ripples beyond your sight. It's either making things better or worse. At that, all of a sudden the old man realizes, I want to be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem, which I'm hoping that's started ringing some ears. If you're feeling I want to be a part of it. So at that, he then says, well, let me help you right there. And he starts helping her on the beach. Now, immediately, two are going back at once. So everything exponentially grows. But more importantly, Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
other people from around Dead Starfish Beach start seeing these two out there doing this work. Like, what are these people doing out there on Dead Starfish Beach? And Daniel, you're good at this. You are a starfish catcher by normal trait, but you know this with your work with the lions that when people start doing good, it actually attracts more people because
Mm-hmm.
actions are contagious. That's number 4. Action makes a difference. It ripples beyond your sight. There's no neutral actions, you're either helping or hurting, and your actions are contagious. So if we could start to consciously choose to do these actions, we then realize that we're rippling them and we're starting to set the new tone. Now, the fifth thing that happens is right along line of what Dion was talking about in the show. A scientist comes up and says, why aren't you looking upstream to what are sending these starfish down the beach? And the little girl says, that's a great idea. You must be a scientist, but I'm not a scientist. I'm going to still help these people on the ground or these starfish on the ground. Can you go figure that out? Then a chef comes up and says, I'd like to help, but I can't really touch. Of course, I'm doing some sort of random chef accent. I don't even know what culture I'm trying to. But he basically says, I don't want to be touching starfish when I'm cooking food. So she says, why don't you bring your food truck here once a week to get people to come? A singer comes down and says, I can write a song, Save the Starfish. It would be a singer, though, not
Mm-hmm.
that. And then the fifth aha is we all realize, oh my gosh, everybody has their own role that they like to do in cleaning the beach. And what is cleaning the beach? You know, it's changing the norm. So it doesn't matter what you're doing at home right now. If you're like a legislator, if you are a mom, if you are a bus driver, if you are a restaurant server, all of us have our own way of actually helping to solve these problems. So if we realize these five things, every action makes a difference. Every action ripples beyond your sight. There's no neutral. Our actions are contagious. And the fifth one, everyone has their own unique role. When you put that together, these things that seem impossible to deal with actually start to transform. And Daniel, you had a great suggestion of using the story and transmitting it to different groups. And so you and I have had this wonderful talk before where we say instead of calling it Dead Starfish Beach, call it Addicts Alley. And then everyone says, oh, and you know, there's always going to be addiction. There's always going to be people there. You know,
It is what it is.
it is what it is. But you help one person who's experiencing addiction get back into the ocean, then that person can go and help other people who are experiencing it. And then if we're doing it out loud and in public, which we're doing right now, talking about it to help destigmatize this stuff, then more people can realize, hey, I can get help. And so these things that seem overwhelming, and right now one is the crisis of the opioid crisis. It's if we all play our part, if we all understand our intention in the village, we can actually solve it just like we have many issues before. And I want to put that out there because sometimes people think things are hopeless, but we can all look back into periods of history where not everyone had the same freedoms and luxuries as we do now. And hopefully we're walking towards a more free and equitable society. But for people who think big change is impossible, we just need to look at our history. But now it's our turn. We are the ones in this revolution. How do you do it? By just simple conversations with the people around you. So hopefully that answers your question that if you're feeling hopeless in this, it's really every action that you do towards a cause will make a difference and it will spread. It's just realizing that you have that power of influence and then actually using it. We have a funny little statement that says, if I put $3 million here in cash and you never spent it, that is just paper.
Yeah.
If we had a Lamborghini here and never turned the key, it is just a rock, right? So the same thing with your power of influence. If you know better and are not telling the people around you how to do better, you're not using that power.
So, having heard that story several times in different settings,
And thanks for sitting through it.
oh, of course, it gets better every time. But I think there's actually a sixth aha that you haven't quite touched on. You mentioned it. The sixth aha is that it takes a starfish to talk to a starfish, and that's the power of peer-to-peer messaging. So when that little girl sends out and says, I'm going to take this starfish, and in its own language, it will talk to other starfish. So when we're talking about this as a metaphor for addiction, part of what the cause does is focus on peer to peer messaging. Why is that so important when it comes to the power of influence? And if we want to be social cause influencers, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And basically we're influenced by our peers. We are all mirrors. And I think a lot of us don't realize that, but that's, you know, part four of the ahas is that actions are contagious. So a lot of us don't realize that we're actually out there just following our peers all the time anyway. Like, oh, you got Nikes, I got Nikes. You got this, I got that. You're watching that, I'm watching that, you know? And so with that, we're constantly being influenced by our peers all the time. We can hear messages from our peers. And again, Dion talked about this, you're a master at this, in stories, in storytelling. And so if I told you I'm going through something or I have a certain belief about something, or, you know, you as a friend of mine, if you told me that, I'm more curious to hear what Daniel has to say because I have a relationship I've established with you of trust, of that I think we're in it together for the same thing, rather than I hear it coming from a random media commercial or something like that. So the power of peer-to-peer messaging is really, it's we are influenced by our peers, but it really only is able to work when we understand. And I love what you did with that sixth aha. How do we get the starfish to understand their power? Because hopefully these stories are helping with it. But I think what happens is, we just we maybe don't feel that we have the ability to do these things, so we're not putting it out there. Um, but what we've realized is this, and with the cause, and you mentioned social cause influencers, that's one of our programs. It's funded by the state through the Substance Abuse Block Grant, the Children's Department. And in that program, we are consciously and intentionally creating a group of influencers who are teenagers and youth, and also youth serving organizations who are just starting to exercise their peer-to-peer messaging muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I want to say about peer-to-peer messaging is like sometimes in the field we think of it as like you got to make a PSA, make a poster. I want to start thinking about, instead of projects, we think about the messenger
Itself, yes.
And so if our programs are working, and this may be, you said that you've seen success in having people feel that they have the power to do it, it is within that section of power that they actually can start to move these things forward. We're going to edit for a second because I just lost track. What was I? Shoot, there was a good point.
Social cause influencers. The power of it. Well,
Yeah.
Well, but you were talking about, it's about the messenger, not a project.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, ready? Tell me when, Sean. I'm just going to go like this so you know when it is. Okay. So on that point of the messenger, a lot of times the programs that we are funded to do in the past are really about, we want a product, we want a public service announcement from this. So we are telling our funders straight up, you will get that deliverable of the product, but what we're really working on is giving someone the confidence to have conversations at every moment of their life, to see every teachable moment in their life, to have the prepared things of how to say certain things in certain situations. If they're trying to change someone's mind or say no to a substance, we can get them to start preparing those things. So if we start looking at, we are training human beings to be constant, intentional evolvers who are constantly looking at new ways to live that are happier and healthier for themselves and others, and then constantly sharing that information. And we make it part of our everyday, instead of, checking our Facebook, our Candy Crush, we're just like, who could we influence today? Then we'll see a real difference, because we're not project based. We are holistically creating the people who, no matter what comes in front of them, because I'll tell you what, we're going to solve these problems. We are. We're on the way to doing right now. But I'll also tell you what, there's more problems coming down the road. There's always a bunch of piles of problems. And another theme that I've seen a lot of these shows that I want to just mention before we close out is the theme of trauma. Because I think at the bottom of that iceberg that we talked about at the beginning, a lot of it is people who've experienced trauma. And something that I want to make sure everyone hears out there is that no matter your history of trauma, your ability to live a life where you can cope with this trauma and have manageable experiences, it depends on your support systems. Now, those support systems could be everything from systems of care, resources that people can tap into that are very realistic, but the one support system that I'm really trying to awaken in this particular episode is human beings. A caring person to another person actually is one of the greatest support systems, because that person can be there as the listener, as the comforter, but also as the connector to resources. So all of these other things that maybe someone who's experiencing addiction can't quite fully focus on, that person right next to them, if they understand, I am the support system. And so that leads us to another point that must be said. If you're watching the show and you've gotten this far, you're probably thinking about drug addiction and things like that. But we want you to know that, like, this shit, why do I keep messing up? I'm thinking about too many things at once. Sorry.
But we want you to know, you can start right there, whatever you want them to know.
Oh, yes. Okay. Ready? But what we want you to know is this theory that we call on the boat theory. And so this theory is for everyone out there who's saying it doesn't matter the issue. You're like, I'm not connected to it. So when people aren't connected to it, I don't know any people who are using drugs, so I don't really care about it's the drug users who are doing that. Or I don't know anyone who's doing domestic violence, so I don't need to care about that, right? So what happens is we all don't care about things before they happen. So the on the boat theory is this. On the boat, you got people who are doing well in life and they're happy and healthy and they're okay, right? They're safe. The people who fall off the boat are the people who are maybe experiencing addiction or getting into trouble. A lot of times our prevention work has always been on, or our intervention work is like, hey, you who fell off the boat, quickly swim onto the boat, climb back on. When that person is in panic mode, they are in fight or flight mode, they are drowning, and we're trying to be like, you can do it, come on back to the boat. When we have a whole boat full of healthy people who have life rings, who have boats. And so the idea is, if we realize, the people watching at home, that you don't need to experience issues to be a healthy person on a boat who, first of all, in the intervention sense, can learn how to help people who've fallen into the water, but in the prevention sense, to learn how to help people not fall in the water, or see people who are about to teeter in and be like, oh, okay, or create systems that benefit us, like guardrails and things like that. So that's where like laws come in. But as you can see, just in that description, there are so many different roles in that we can all have safely on the boat, and then getting everyone. And who's off the boat? They're our family and friends, Daniel.
Yeah.
They're us.
Yeah.
I've been off the boat many times. So let's get everyone on the boat. Let's sail towards safety. And we have a few programs that can do that. Again, Social Cause Influencers gets kids to be the messengers embedded in their own communities doing that. And so that's just one example of intentionally doing it. But we need our listeners to start thinking of, how do I want to put my hand into this game? What's my role? So, what are the things I can do on a daily basis that will start inspiring others? And I really hope that right now, as you're watching this, you're just thinking about like, oh, I could write a song, or I could have a community cleanup, or I could reach out to my brother-in-law who needs a call.
So, if people want to know more about all of the things you're talking about, where do they go?
Well, they can go to causetheworld.com. And then also we have a great presence on YouTube, because a lot of the peer-to-peer messaging, we do have people making videos and they spread it out there. That is YouTube at Cause Community Network. And of course, our goal is in the name, Cause Community Network. And I do, please reach out. We're also on Facebook, the Cause Production Crew. Because there's a whole bunch of different programs that we didn't mention in here, but they have everything from video production classes to trauma-informed training. And right now we're sitting in the Cause Theater, where there is monthly activities going on, where we bring in people for live sort of infotainment education. And a lot of times it is actually almost all the time run by peers. And so the group that we're focusing on right now is teenagers a lot, and young adults. So we have shows that are completely managed by teens that talk about a bunch of different issues. So Cause the World, check out that stuff out there. But be a part of the cause. That's what we're hoping everyone could be. And you never have to get in touch with us to do that. You just have to realize your power of influence in the people right around you, and just start asking the question, hey, what could I do? What actions could I do that might start to unfold better results in my life? And then have fun testing them out. We're going to fail. I just read a quote this morning. If you're not willing to do something, if you want to do something good, you have to be willing to learn how to do it bad. So sometimes you figure out how to have these conversations on the fly, but you just got to start doing it to help destigmatize and to help get this help we need.
Well, and thank you for starting that process here today with our viewers and listeners. We've been talking about it. You need to talk about it. We're all on the boat. Tune in next